What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? I'm Donald51.
And I'm Mekkah.
And welcome to my FE7 Hector hard mode 0% gross playthrough, which I'm sure that you are all very excited to see, and we are all very excited to bring to you. So FE7, even though it's a fairly simple game, holds a special place in my heart because it was my entry point to the Fire Emblem series back in 2003. I was inspired to play Fire Emblem due to the presence of Roy and Marth in Super Smash Bros. Melee, as I'm sure was the case of many people who entered the series at that time. It also holds a couple other firsts for me. It was the first 0% gross playthrough that I did unofficially, and it was also my first attempt at a commentated playthrough on YouTube, which fortunately no longer exists. But if you were around long enough to have been there when it was uploaded, you would remember how abysmal it was.
I remember that playthrough. I thought it was really enjoyable, and it has a certain charm to it, you know? You watch a video and you're like, alright, it's commentated, that's great, I just get to listen to this all video long. And halfway through the video, Donna just goes, alright, I think that's all there's for me to say on this map, so it's gonna be cleared in 4 turns, goodbye. And then it just keeps playing the gameplay without any commentary. That was super weird. I missed that run, but we're gonna make a better one now. I also really like FE7. It was also my first Fire Emblem game. I got into the series around the time Radiant Dawn was released, or about to release. But I started with FE7, and I was very bad at it back then, got a little bit better in the meantime. I did like a negative growth playthrough of FE7 at one point on my channel, and my first video on YouTube is also an FE7 video. It has Isadora completely pruning Linus in the final chapter. It has like a frame rate of 1 frame per hour. It's a great video. So FE7 in a way is very special to me, and I really look forward to doing this run as well.
So with these playthroughs, it's customary for me to use a minimally edited version of the game that only sets the growth rates of player units to 0%, and in the cases of games that were released only in Japan and never localized, an English translation patch. But we're going to go one step further with FE7, courtesy of the efforts of folks at FEUniverse, especially Tequila, and also a shout out to Skryza for helping me with the bug with the patch that I'm using. Tequila came out with a suite of quality of life patches for FE8 and FE7, which emulate some of the things that we see in the later Fire Emblem games, such as units with stationary AI displaying 0 movement, or a button that toggles a global enemy threat range, things that never existed in the era of GBA Fire Emblem. We're not going to be using many of those. The only one that we are going to implement is a patch that shows combat stats when the map animations play, parameters like damage, hit, critical, and attack speed. And the reason for this is because Fire Emblem 7 is a very enemy phase heavy game, and dodge tanking is a viable strategy. So if we throw a unit into a complicated enemy phase, it would be helpful for the players to know how much damage each party is doing, what their hit rates are like, whether each unit doubles, and if I had to rely on a critical hit, what the critical hit rate is like too.
One tool that we're not going to make use of is the enemy control glitch. This is a glitch in the game that, as the name implies, lets you control enemies. This would let you, for example, move bosses towards you to kill them sooner in the kill boss objective, or move them off a throne or gate to seize without having to fight them. This is so game breaking that Dandan decided not to use it for obvious reasons. It's fun to do in normal playthroughs, and all you really need for it is like a torch or a mine. Dandan has access to those tools, but we just decided that breaks the game a little bit too much, so we're going to leave that out. Other than what was mentioned, this run can be played on vanilla Hector hard mode. We're doing Hector hard mode because it is the most difficult mode in the game and also the most complete one. It has every chapter in it. And we're not going to be playing Lin hard mode because it's not going to make the run any more interesting and probably harder to complete. The reason for this is because some units in Lin mode will join at a lower level with lower stats or lower weapon ranks than they would in Hector hard mode. For example, Wrath in vanilla Lin mode joins at level 7 with C bows, whereas in Hector hard mode he joins with B bows and at level 9, so much closer to promotion than that. So Lin mode, not very interesting, and actually makes the game a lot harder.
And that stands in contrast to the gross playthrough, in which normally we will want to play Lin mode just for Super Saiyan or Super Kent and Super Florina. And beyond all that, as usual, we're going to go by the rules of full recruitment. That does make things both more and less interesting in a sense, because there is one very good unit critical to the run that requires us to wait around several turns, which is kind of boring, and there are a couple of chapters like that where we have to wait around to recruit a unit as opposed to just finishing the objective quickly. But it does introduce a somewhat interesting overarching objective throughout the entire playthrough, and most of you guys who have played Fire Emblem 7 will know what I'm talking about. We're also going to go to all accessible paralogues in Hector hard mode. The only chapter that is inaccessible because we didn't play Lin mode and also because we didn't train a certain unit up to level 7 is chapter 19XX. Paralogs are generally pretty easy to go to because the requirements are simple, but there is one paralog in particular that is hard to go to in an LTC setting, so that's something that we have to take into account as well. The last thing we're going to explain before we dive into the run is how RNG abusing works in the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem games. In these games, the RNG is really not random at all. It appears random, it generates a list of apparently random numbers, but it's entirely deterministic, and the thing is that every time you turn on your Game Boy and reload a chapter from a fresh save, you will start from the same point in the random number sequence. And that means that every sequence of actions that you do, as long as you repeat it consistently, is going to yield the same outcome. The reason why this is important is that, unlike in later games, where if we want to go for a low likelihood of success strategy, we could just reset over and over again until we get the outcome that we want. But in this game, sometimes things that are more likely to happen just don't happen because of how the RNG order works, and sometimes things that are very unlikely to happen will always happen. One way to kind of introduce some variation to this is to be able to change the RNG or advance the RNG in a deterministic way. And the way that you do this in speedruns and in TASes is to take a unit, move them to their maximum movement range in the L shape, and wobble the movement cursor between two adjacent diagonal tiles. That will consume numbers in the RNG and affect the outcome going forward. I won't go into too much explanation, but you can kind of see in the video how that action advances the RNG and changes the outcome of like a round of combat, for example. And if you ever see me do that in the playthrough, that's the intention behind it. We're going to minimize the number of times that we have to do that because honestly it looks like I'm just trying to rig low percent things, but it's something that we have to end up doing during parts of the playthrough regardless. Thanks for your attention, stay tuned, we will see you next time.
See ya.